Joining me now, Mike Schoelwer, running for Republican chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia from the Northern Neck. Hey, Mike, thanks for coming on.
I really enjoyed your description of Richmond. I guess if you're wasted and looking for Cheetos, burned out stores doesn't bother you very much. But I was in Richmond a couple of weeks ago, and I had to move out to the west. Go out to the west for some reason, and I remember planning my route out there to avoid the danger areas and looking for exits and commo plan and high-speed egress. That's what I did in Sarajevo during the war. That's what I did in Kabul. Why am I doing that in an American city? That is unforgivable. And this is exactly why the RPV has to get back up on the step. We're the one institution that can hold the line against this insanity across the state. We have got to get back to where we need to be. We were the grand old party. Virginia needs us to be grand again. We have got to get back up there. And in my opinion, the base, the committees, the GOP committees, and the counties, they're fired up. They're ready to go. The place that comes off the rails is at the center of the RPV. And that's in the chairman's office, and that's in our state central committee. That's where we've got to tighten that up. And, as I've said in my emails, I spent my life in the Marine Corps and in the direction of operations in the CIA, running increasingly larger organizations and learning how to do strategy, learning how to manage, learning how to use large resources, but also how to plan and execute. And frankly, it's one thing to learn it in a book, it's one thing to learn it in peacetime, but when you got to go out and do it in wartime against a living, sentient adversary, that's what really kicks you up to the next highest level. And it's those skill sets that I want to bring to the RPV to get us back to where the RPV needs to be. We need to stop being a small, insular little club. We got to be an organization that owns its mistakes, that corrects them, and it is capable of producing the leaders that can govern Virginia. That's where we need to be, and I want to get us there.
How are you going to do that, Mike?
Well, I think there's three things we got to do. The first thing is the chairman has to set an assertive agenda, an aggressive agenda. Second, state central committee is the mechanism, it's the pipes that we got to organize to link us back to the local committees. I mean, the local committees, like I said, are fired up and ready to go, but they need some central leadership. And third, I think the mechanism we got to do it is we've got to get candidates to run at every level, up and down the ballot, and particularly at the county level, because that's where we grow new talent, and that's where we find membership. And, 2019, we'll have 25% of the state uncovered. That was a strategic blunder.
Yeah, but that's not really, I want to get to that, Mike Schoelwer, just reality. Look, I agree with what you're saying, because I think that if somebody was right now as chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, there should be a press conference every day on the disaster that's going on in Richmond and the facts that, Stoney can't get the city under control. Look, Mike, the fact that Mayor Stoney, in his letter, he said his top priority to Governor Northam, and he sent this to Governor Northam, Clark Mercer, his chief of staff, was running for lieutenant governor, so I got to bring him into this now. He's going to be a candidate in 2021 for lieutenant governor. He's a good guy. Let's bring him in, sends it to them, sends it to Caucus of the Corn, and says, my number one priority, legalize pot. So Stoney's answer to Richmond is, let's all get stoned.
There's a one-word response to that. Wow. That's all you can say. Wow. But this is exactly why we've been letting them get off with this. I mean, in the COVID-19 crisis, when it was first coming out, we had tens of thousands of pieces of protective equipment that shipped to Virginia. We lost them. We had blood tests that we absolutely needed and capacity that was idle. And who in Richmond was paying attention? And now we got a school system that's out of control. Nobody knows what's going on. Where's the Virginia school board? And who's holding them to account? And to me, the ultimate symbol was guys next to the Capitol, construction workers put up an American flag, and the Virginia state government makes them take it down because of Walito incite the rioters. What up with that?
Mm-hmm.
Why, and this is exactly the kind of stuff we should be standing up to. But that's just part of it. That's the changing, what Abraham Lincoln called the public mind. But the strategic depth of the RPV and what's going to kill us in 2021, a repeat of 2019, is we're not paying attention to what's going on at the county level. Mm-hmm. Like I said, that's a strategic depth of the RPV, and we let that go fallow. You don't have to get a phone call from NASA to see where that trajectory goes. But we did it in 2017. We lost half our majority in the House of Delegates. We did it in 2019. We lost the rest of the majority, and now we're getting ready to do it again in 2021. The RPV leadership has to take ownership of these mistakes and do something about it. And you got to quit saying, "Oh, it's the fault of the voters. The voters let us down. Oh, the donors don't want to give us money anymore. It's their fault. Oh, the media is mean to us." Well, we got to reach out to the voters. We got to have a presence in those communities where we have conservative voters that we're not talking to, and the donors aren't giving us money because the party doesn't have credibility anymore. I not talk to big donors. They say, "You guys get your act together. We'll be back in." But until you come up with a solid plan and show us you're intent on winning again, we're not going to put good money after bad. And the media, if you want the media to listen to you, frankly, you got to say something worth listening to.
Well, that's true.
And we're
not
doing that right now.
With you there, Mike. I've been very critical of the asinine press releases that Garen Shipley sends out on the behalf of the minority leader, Todd Gilbert. I mean, they don't say anything. It's 2 paragraphs. It's nothing. I mean, there's absolutely no leadership going on in the caucus minority, but that's a whole nother story. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Mike Schoelwer. Mike is one of 3 candidates running for chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. That'll be decided Saturday in an unassembled convention around the state. People go in and vote. If you're a delegate, you can vote. If you're not eligible. You would have already had to sign up for that a while back. And there's also on the ballot a race for state committee woman. We've endorsed Jean Gannon. I'm voting for her. So is Ann. Just so everybody knows, we are voting for Jean Gannon. A couple of questions here. We're not going to agree on it, but I am so adamantly opposed to conventions that I've now become a single issue voter on that one issue, and I never thought I would be a single issue voter on anything. But I don't see, Mike, if you're chairman, and I know you favor conventions, I just don't see how you're going to grow the party by nominating federal and state candidates in conventions that every one of them is rigged. You got people that are unit chairs on payrolls of candidates. A tiny handful of people are involved in the nomination process. They're fraught with fraud. I want primaries. I think that you'll get better data. People have to run a campaign. You have to come out and vote. And so I like your background. I like what you're saying. But I can't support anybody that is going to perpetuate these conventions that I think have been a disaster for Virginia Republicans. Your response, Mike?
Well, I mean, conventions, primaries, firehouse primaries. How do you choose? It's a very firm. It depends, and I'll give you an example. Where we are in the first district, got Rob Whitman, good guy, unchallenged, multiple tours in Congress. Why would we go to the trouble of having a $10,000 convention just to say we're going to do what's already been shown? And in places like in the 7th, where we had multiple candidates, the sort of the Oklahoma land rush method of picking candidates, a lot of times the convention is the best way to get the will of the Republicans. Now, the problem with the conventions is, first of all, anybody that thinks a convention can't be manipulated isn't paying attention. And second, conventions take all day. Republicans have jobs. Republicans have families. They don't have a whole day to vote to that. So there's a lot to say about getting all the party together and caucusing, making a decision, working out deals, but it's not without issues. But primaries, you look at primaries are manipulated too, and not necessarily by the other side. I mean, there's some soft fuzzy evidence that sometimes the Democrats will come in and vote in our elections. But that's pretty rare.
Yes, it's 1%
when you look at
on average.
2016, when you look at the presidential election or the primary in 2016,
right.
We had tens of thousands of Trump voters who weren't registered Republicans who wanted to vote for the president.
Right.
And the Republican Party of Virginia tried to disenfranchise them by Sunday coming up. And frankly, it was the guy you endorsed, Jack Wilson, that was trying the lawsuit against the Trump voter.
No, that was all John Whitback doing. Look, I was heavily involved in that.
That was Jack Wilson arguing the case. He was the lawyer.
Jack had nothing to do. No, Jack had nothing to do with it. That was a John Whit. That was a Ted. That was a.
I will send you the court documents.
They hired him. They hired him as their lawyer. All right, the guy's paid to be a lawyer, but that was orchestrated by the Ted Cruz campaign, John Whitback, Ken Cuccinelli, Senator Stanley. Yeah. They orchestrated that thing from start to finish. You know how we beat that? I got on the radio every day across the state and blasted it and got a whole bunch of other media people.
They pulled the lawsuit, but how many people found that out? How many Trump voters didn't go to the poll because they were told repeatedly they were going to have to sign a loyalty oath to the Republican Party?
That's why, you know.
So anyway, but look, the bottom line is whatever, and this is what I want to do. Whatever we do, whatever nomination we pick, it has to be fair, it has to be transparent, it can't be manipulated, and it has to stay in control of the party.
Well, you can't do that. You can't do that, Mike, with a convention. I want to move off that. Jack Wilson's the incumbent, so if you're going to vote for change, you got two candidates, right? Mike and Rich Anderson. So if you're voting for change, right? Why would you vote for Mike Schoelwer over Rich Anderson? That's really the question here at issue.
Sure, exactly. If you look at our records, you know, Rich is a high-performing guy. I've got a high-performing background. Rich's background, though, is the legislature. My skill sets are in executive activity and executive skills. And Rich has critical skills that the RPV needs. But frankly, I think my skill set is better for what the RPV needs at this moment in time. And I'll also tell you that if I get elected, I'm going to work closely with Rich to start implementing some of these programs. Because frankly, what's wrong with the RPV is far too big for one guy to fix. But to me, in my mind, what gives me the edge, why I'm the better guy right now, is just my 40 years of experience in running big organizations. Which is why I can see those problems I was talking about with the RPV. This is my fourth time that this rodeo of being in a big organization needs to change.
Other than your experience, is there any other policy type difference or culture type difference between Mike Schoelwer and Rich Anderson? By the way, we invited Rich on today. He didn't show up and whatever. Okay, so you've got the floor. If somebody is voting for change, they don't want Jack. Right? I mean, because that's really what, if you're voting for Jack, you're voting for Jack, okay? And there's reasons why you might be, but if you don't want Jack, you got to vote for change, and there's two candidates for change. If I want change, why do I vote for Mike Schoelwer and not Anderson? Tell me something about Anderson that would turn someone off and should vote for you.
Well, I think Rich is closely associated with the legislature. And that's where he knows, and that's his tribe, so to speak. And I think too often the legislature has played too large of an interest in running the RPV. We have most of the time our interests are parallel, and we need to work together. But there are times when the RPV's interest is different than the House caucus or the Senate caucus. And the whole idea of running candidates is a prime example. I can understand from the perspective of a House caucus manager, PAC manager, they don't want to spend money on races they're not going to win. But that makes no sense at all from the perspective of the RPV not to enter a race and a candidate in a race. And too often the legislature, the caucus, has had a strong voice in who the delegates are going to be, who the candidates are going to be. I think that's backwards. The candidates, the elected officials, work for us, the people. We don't work for them. And they don't get to choose their own bosses. They don't get to check their own homework. That's the function of the RPV, and that's why the chairman of the RPV has to be a standalone, independent voice for the RPV. Mm-hmm. I don't want to represent the RPV. I want to represent the RPV to everybody else. I don't want to represent other people to the RPV.
Mike Schoelwer with us, one of three candidates running for chairman of the Republican Party that will be decided tomorrow on the 15th unassembled convention. If you're a delegate, definitely want to show up. You can just go to rpv.org, find out where you go based on what district you're in. If you're in district or the 4th like I am, or somewhere in Windsor, that is on rpv.org. So, Mike, you put something out the other day that was kind of interesting, and let me give a disclaimer. I've endorsed Jack Wilson. Ann and I are voting for Jack. However, thanks for coming on, because I'm going to be fair no matter what I do beyond that, and I think I've been fair today. You said that in an email you sent out that I read, you said, you know what, I'm not going to engage in the negative campaigning of the two candidates. What is it that spurred that email?
Well, first of all, let me say, I think Jack Wilson's a good guy. I think he's a decent guy. I just think he's got the wrong skill set for what we need right now. But that in no way diminishes my appreciation for what Jack has done for the party. What spurred me to put out that email you're talking about is somebody has been sending out unattributed, in my opinion, mudslinging emails about Rich Anderson. And I'm like, that's not right. That's not what we're about. We need to campaign on the issues. We need to stand up and talk. This happened, and it's bad, and we need to change it. It's not character assassination or slander, and for two reasons. First of all, to me, ethically, it's wrong. But also, when this election's over, we have got to come back together and unify as a party. And that's not going to happen if somebody's out there slandering other people. Mm-hmm. And that's why, if you look at what Rich and I have done, it's been strictly on the issues. So that's the way we need to run an organization. That's the way we need to run campaigns. And I'm not going to get into sending backbiting, underhanded, mudslinging messages or texts like that. I'll criticize Jack's performance, but I'm not going to criticize him as a person.
I appreciate that, Mike. In the voting, just so that everyone knows if you're voting here, in the voting, it's ranked choice, so that means there's three candidates. When the first votes comes in, first two candidates with the highest number go on to the second round. The candidate with the lowest number is out. But the candidate that finished third, then their votes stay the same, but then they take that candidate and then they go to their second choice. So if you vote, it's called ranked choice. So if you have a second choice, then that goes to the one of the two candidates. This was even, no matter who you like in this race, you got to put a second choice down. So you just heard Mike, and so if you're voting for Jack, that's fine. You got to put a second choice down. It could be Mike, or it could be or vice versa, whatever you want to do. But Mike, look, I really appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate you getting in the race and putting yourself out there. You certainly have a story to tell and a lot of experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me the chance to be Daniel in the Lions Den. But,
it was all right, right? I mean, look. I endorse people all the time and get the opposition on. I mean, the whole thing is to be fair. Everybody knows where I stand, and that's really the bottom line.